In this video, we are going to be solving word problems by writing inequality. So more specifically, the objective here is to pull out important information from a word problem to create and solve an inequality. Okay, so in this case, we have the length of a rectangular yard is 50 feet and the perimeter is less than 170 feet. Describe the width of the yard. So there's a few things we know. One, we know that the length is 50 feet, and they also tell us that the perimeter is less than 170 feet. Now, because they actually use the word perimeter, we know that we are going to be using the formula 2W plus 2L equals P. That is the formula for perimeter. Now, they go ahead and tell us the length. It's 50 feet. So I can go ahead and substitute 50 in for L. And then they say the perimeter is less than 170 feet. Is less than, using less than in quantity, for 170 feet. It does not say that it equals it, only that it's less than, so therefore no line underneath. And now we solve. So whenever we solve this, we can go ahead and multiply 2 times 50 to get 100, and that is less than 170 feet. So to solve, I'm going to subtract 100 on both sides. They cancel, leaving you 2W is less than 70, and then you would divide by 2. The 2's cancel, leaving you W is less than 35. Normally, at this point, you would be done. That's it. The width has to be less than 35 feet. However, you got to understand that this is a real world connection. So if you were to graph this, here's 35, here is 0, here's the number line. W has to be less than 35 feet, correct? But think about this in the real world. The width cannot be a negative number. You can't have a negative amount of fence. You also cannot have a 0 amount of width either. So if there is no width, that means you would have just a string, a long line of a length of fence. You wouldn't have a perimeter. So therefore, the actual answer to this is the fact that the W must be contained between 0 and 35 because it cannot equal 0 and width cannot be a negative number. So you could write it in set notation to where the width will represent everything from 0 to 35. And don't forget, we are discussing feet. Either one of these would be correct. Okay, next, a salesperson earns a salary of $700 per month plus 2% of the sales. Okay, the big plus sign, no, you're going to be adding. What must the sales be? The salesperson is to have a monthly income of at least $1,800. So we know that he automatically receives $700 per month. Plus, he receives 2% of the sales. Now, since that isn't a percent, we must make it a decimal, so it'd be 0.02 of the sales. I'm going to let S represent sales. And they want to know when he can have at least $1,800 per month, which means he can have greater than, but he has to have at least $1,800 a month. So that is why you would use the greater than or equals inequality. So I'm going to draw a line and solve. So first we're going to go ahead and subtract 700 on both sides. I will get 0.02S is greater than or equal to $1,100. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 0.02. They will cancel, leaving me S, and 1,100 divided by 0.02 represents $55,000. Now, what does that mean? It means that he has to sell at least $55,000 of a product in order for his monthly income to be at least $1,800. So you can either read the right like this, or you can write it as the fact that, oops, don't forget that, as he can make, as long as he sold at least $55,000 worth of a product, and everything above that would be considered the set inequality. Okay, next, the cost of a field trip is $220 plus $7 per student. So again, this helps us to understand how to write the equation, or in this case, inequality, and they want to spend at most $500, okay? So we know that it's going to cost $220 plus $7 per student. Again, here I'm going to make S become student. The school can spend at most, which means they cannot spend more. $500 is the most that they can spend, so therefore it is going to be a less than sign, and it would be $500. It does equal it because at most means it can equal $500. So in order to solve this inequality, we are going to first subtract $220. we will get 7s is less than or equal to $280. Now, last step, we're going to divide by 7. So the number of students is less than or equal to 40. Now, again, you would want to stop there. But if you think about this, in a number line, there is 40, there is 0. In a number line, it's saying that they could be 40 students, or it could be anything less than 40 students. However, you cannot have a negative student. So there is a parameter that will stop. So the final answer is going to be it can be 0 students. I guess technically no students could go. So anywhere from 0, number of students, up to 40 students are able to attend. So that would be the parameter. Or you could say anywhere from 0 to 40 as a set notation of the number of students. Okay, compound inequality is a little more tricky, but still totally doable. So the plans for a circular plastic part in a medical instrument require the diameter to be within 0.2 inches of 0.5 inches, meaning it can be 0.5 inches, or it can be 0.2 above that, or it can be 0.2 below that. So let's actually discuss this. This would be considered an and. You have parameters on both sides of the type of a diamond that you could have. So we know that it could be within 0.5 plus 0.2. We also know that it can be within 0.5 minus 0.2. So it can be, basically the diameter can be anywhere from 0.3 inches in diameter to 0.7 inches in diameter. Okay, within 2, okay, that's going to be your hint. Within 2 means you're going to add and you're going to subtract, because it can be within 2 on either side, above it or it can be below it. Now, a machinist finds that he has a diameter that is 1.73 inches. He wants to know how much should he decrease the diameter by. So he starts with 0.73 inches. He wants to know how much does he need to decrease meaning subtract, in order to keep it inside the parameters of 0.3 to 0.7. So that is how you would actually set up the inequality. Now let's go ahead and solve. To solve this inequality, I'm going to actually draw lines going down both sides. Now, 1.73, we need to isolate the x, so we need to get rid of it. It is a positive, so we are going to subtract 1.73 from both sides. When we do this, we will get a negative 0.43. That gives me a negative x on the inside. Do not forget about the negative. And this will lead me with a negative 0.03 on the right-hand side. Last step, you have a negative x, so we need to divide everything by a negative 1. When we do that, we will get a positive 0.43 and a positive 0.03. Now, here's the deal. We divided by a negative, so therefore we must flip the inequality. So the answer would be in this case. However, most interval notations and inequality notations, the left, you always go from smallest to the largest number. So I'm going to flip this so that the smallest number, the 0.03, is going to be smaller than the 0.43. You could also write it as a set notation of 0.3 all the way to 0.43. So either one of these is going to be your answer of finding the inequality of the number of inches that the machinist needs to subtract from his diameter in order to keep it inside the parameter. Last, okay, we have between 15,000 cubic yards and 16,000 cubic yards of earth that must be trucked away from a construction site. So we already have the beginnings of our parameter. We know that between 15,000 and 16,000 cubic yards must be trucked away. Now, each day, the truck removes 1,000 cubics per day. So we know that 1,000 cubics per day can be removed. And 10,500 cubic yards has already been removed. So we now have our inequality that we can solve. So the first thing we do, draw our lines. We're going to subtract 10,500 from every side of the inequality. So we will get 4,500 is less than or equal to 1,000 per day is less than or equal to 5,500 cubic yards. Now, last, we're going to solve by dividing by 1,000 from each side. And we will get 4.5 is less than or equal to D is less than or equal to 5.5. Now, what does that tell us? That tells us that it's going to take between 4.5 and 5.5 days in order to truck away that amount of earth from the construction site. So again, you could write it like this, or you could also write it as the fact it can be between 0.4 and 4.5 and 5.5 days.